Good morning.
Thanks for being here on this Friday morning. It feels a little like fall. It looks like spring. It looks like spring or summer out there. I'm Holly Brenner. I'm glad to be with you this morning. I see mostly familiar faces, but a couple of new ones. I serve as the Senior Vice President of Strategic Development and Marketing for our system, and I feel glad to be able to be here this morning and help facilitate our Know and Go. We've got a great one, another great one scheduled for you. And I'm very pleased to welcome the three founding members of our Diversity and Inclusion Committee that we have here at Agnesian Healthcare. That's Dr. Evelyn Schaefer, and she'll be up here in a few moments. She's a psychologist with us. Barb Wilhelms is a Staff and Organizational Development Associate, and Tiffany Parker. Many of you know Tiffany. She's our Domestic Violence Supervisor. They're here to share some background both on the committee and their vision for Agnesian Healthcare as it relates to diversity and inclusion. We also have a very special guest here this morning, and she is actually a TEDx Talk speaker, so you may have seen her during that presentation. Her name is Lindsay Sewell. Lindsay is living out her dream, as I understand it, as the head women's basketball coach at Marian University, and she approaches her every day with one thing in mind, and this is a quote, so I'll read it to you. She focuses on how she can create spaces for her student athletes, staff, and faculty to seek and fulfill their dreams. So Lindsay will be providing our reflections, so if you could join me in welcoming her, I would appreciate that.
Is this on?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. Very special is a little aggressive, I think, but I'll take it for this Friday morning. So thanks for having me. I'm just going to kind of go into a little bit about what I talked about at my TEDx. I think it's more than one message needs to be said about it, and then we'll kind of end with that. So I'm just going to start by saying perhaps the elephant in the room is getting a little bit hard to ignore. At least for me it is. We all have an elephant, and we take it with us into new places, in new transitions, or just in general everywhere we go. And an elephant is what makes us different from one another. Okay? We all have an elephant, and mine is that I'm gay. So let me start by saying this morning that I invite you to be present today. And by present, I mean a little bit vulnerable. And maybe facing yourself in a mirror today that can cause a little shame, cause a little guilt, and a little regret looking into your past. But with that said, don't be afraid. I'm here with you to go through those moments. So let's back up a little bit. When I first stepped up here, what were your thoughts about me? Just think about that for a second. What are your thoughts about me now, a minute or two into this reflection? Did you have another thought of, well, I'm not gay, and I don't know anyone that's gay, so I'm not quite sure what this person is going to do for me today? Or maybe you thought immediately, I don't judge anybody for being different than me, so what could I learn here? The point of this morning was not to out myself to this beautiful room of people, but was rather to introduce awareness in our personal reactions when someone different from us walks into our space. And that happens every single day, because there's not one human being in this world that's like the next. So I want to talk a little bit about my initial reactions that I received when I first spoke about my elephant when I was 18 years old. So it took me 18 years to speak about my elephant. And when I did, I had a variety of reactions. My first reaction was my mother, and it was a very good reaction, although at that point I was crying, so I didn't really know that it was a good reaction. She said, "Are you going to ever bring your partner home? Are you going to bring your children home? Don't let them judge you. And they're going to say a lot of things about you, but don't listen to them." I came from a very small town. I think I should have said that probably prior to that. Very, very small town, where everybody knew everybody's business. In the same day, down the road, I went to my dad's house, and he said, "What are people going to think about you? What are they going to say about you? Did I do something wrong here? It's about them, not about you and what you're feeling." Another reaction was my brother, who I just loved the naiveness in this reaction, so listen to this one. He said, "Okay, whew, I thought you were going to tell me something like 10 times worse than that. So maybe next time lead with a little bit different of an introduction, okay?" And I was like, okay, all right, sorry. My sister then said, "Why didn't you tell me sooner than this? I can imagine that it was really difficult for you to live with this and go to bed at night thinking about this every single day." And then I've had a few people say, "I don't agree with this, so we can no longer be friends." And those were the ones that hurt the most, because it was just me as an individual saying one thing different than they knew my entire lives. So far too often, and I'm going to end kind of with this thought, but far too often we have limits to our love. We say I love you, but in the same kind of sentence we say, I love you, but now that I know you're gay, don't bring your partner home. I love you, but now that I know you're gay, don't start dressing differently because people are going to judge you. I love you, but don't tell your grandparents. You know how they are. So far too often we have that but in there. And for me, we just need to start saying I love you, because the person that expresses that elephant is just as scared as you are in receiving that information, if not more scared than you are. And so in order for us to be able to sit in spaces where there's people that are different from us, we have to use our fear to strengthen that relationship. And in all reality, we just need to love our own elephants first. We need to love ourselves for what we bring into this world, and then that'll make it that much easier to love other people's elephants. So human connection is a really important factor for this, and we need each other to get through these moments. And the biggest thing for me is, with this fear that we all kind of have, there's one thing we have here in this connection, and that's we're all scared of something. All of us. And so that's one thing that we all have in common. And with fear comes this human connection that can really decrease the shame and the guilt and the regret that we live with every day when we bring our elephants into the world. So I challenge this room, and I'm going to challenge probably most people in my life to just love your elephant for who it is and what it is, and really be that person that responds to somebody else's elephant with love without condition. Thank you.
Wow, thank you, Lindsay. That was really a nice message to hear. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay. Good morning to all of you. My name is Barb Wilhelms, and I'm a member of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. I see we have several other members here in the crowd today. If you could stand up for just a minute and be recognized. Thank you. We appreciate everyone's hard work on this committee. This is a graphic representation of some of the members. We didn't put everybody's name up. It's been kind of a revolving door of members as we go. And we welcome new members. If you have anyone in your area or any one of you would like to join, please contact us and we'll get you hooked up. So what is diversity? Diversity means different than. So my favorite color is blue. Your favorite color might be purple or orange or green. Some of the things that we are shaped by is our race, our gender, our economic status, our ethnic background, sexual orientation, our language, etc. The list goes on and on and on. You can see here, this is our direction. We kind of called it our mission statement. We tried to mirror it with our Asian healthcare mission. And basically, once you read it, what it really says is be nice to each other, be kind to each other, be good to each other, accept people for who they are, and do your best for them. Our goals. Our goals are to be welcoming to everyone who comes through our doors, be it our patients, our coworkers, our staff members. We want to share our diversity and inclusion initiatives with everyone, everyone here in our doors and everyone in the community. We hope to grow as we get stronger. We want to support our Agnesian mission. And lastly, I am in the education department, so of course we want to educate. We want to continue to learn things we don't know and help everyone grow and accept each other better. So with that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Evelyn Schaefer. She's going to go over the results of our survey that we did last November. And we're going to tell you a little bit more about how we came to be.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So the evolution of this committee came across really organically.
wasn't something that was a top-down initiative. It really began as we were having discussions regarding different types of accreditation. And different accrediting bodies were asking questions along the lines of, what do you do to attract and retain a diverse workforce? What do you do to meet the needs of your community on a diversity initiative? And as we started looking at what we were already doing at Agnesian, we realized we really didn't have a cohesive effort. We had lots of people doing things, but not a collective group that was looking at initiatives across the board. And so we formed by just turning to our coworkers and asking each other, are you interested in doing this, and bringing people in. The exciting thing is we ended up having people from all the different divisions of Agnesian. People would travel in for our meetings from Waupun and Ripon. And we started meeting and just having conversations, and really wanting to have conversations that were open and honest, at times vulnerable, sometimes uncomfortable. And so we also invite you to have those conversations as well. Up in behavioral health, we have a saying called lean into the discomfort. We don't want people to jump into the deep end and feel like they're drowning, but we do want people to listen to the part of themselves that says, I'm not so sure about this. I feel uncomfortable. I don't know what to do here. And gently lean into that discomfort, because usually when we lean into the discomfort, we go to a place of new understanding and growth. And so very much like Lindsay this morning, I'm going to invite you to lean into the discomfort a little bit. We want to have more associates involved. You'll hear us say that about 5 times, I think, through this talk. But we want our committee to be as diverse as possible and represent Agnesian and our community as a whole. So April 2016 is when we really started having meetings. We're pretty young. We've been doing this for a while. And our first needs assessment was in November of 2016. The D&I survey was the first time we had ever done anything for the community as a whole, asking very specific demographic questions. My HR people will tell you there are only a few things you can ask in applications, but we really wanted to know who is our community. The survey was completely confidential, and it was also completely voluntary. So whoever chose to answer it could answer it. And we were really excited that we had over 1,200 respondents to this. And at the time, that was about 1/3 of our Agnesian population. And because of that, the results of this survey statistically can be generalized to Agnesian as a whole. So it was very exciting to us, because I checked out with other people who sent out surveys. We all get surveys. We all love surveys, right? This was one of the best responded surveys that we had ever done. So I was very excited to see that, because that told me people were interested, people were engaged, and they really wanted to talk more about this topic. So we asked comprehensive questions, and I think those comprehensive questions made people uncomfortable. We had some responses on the survey saying things like, why are you asking this? None of your business. This is private. And I agree, we did ask for private information. Of course, it was veiled in confidentiality. We have no idea who the respondents are. But that's part of leading into the discomfort, starting to have the questions asked of one another. We also based some of the questions on census data and also on best practices, so we could compare them to the data for the county. Sometimes the census data doesn't do the greatest job, and we'll show you where I mean by that later. And really the reason why we wanted to do this was because we wanted to know who is in our community. Oftentimes you'll hear people say things like, Fond du Lac's not that diverse, right? Have we all heard that? Or thought it or said it? Well, the reality is yes and no. I don't think our diversity is as overt as other places in this world, but we are a diverse community. And so when I go through the stats now, and yes, I get to do all the numbers, stay with me on it, look at the stats with open eyes. You might be looking at it and go, see, it looks very clear that we're, as a community, we're 90% white. Well, yes, but that doesn't mean that we don't have diversity within our ranks. So we started out with age. Pretty easy question to answer and warm people up. And again, I'm not going to belabor all of this, but what was really interesting about this one is if you look at the proportion of our workforce that is 50 or older, we are over 40, about 42%, 50 or over, which means in the next 10 to 15 years, we are going to need probably to backfill about 40% of our positions here. And that's assuming no growth. So when you think about that, where are our new associates going to come from? Anybody who has tried to hire somebody lately, it's not easy. We're looking for good people. We want people to be diverse, but we also want to find people who, want to come here and live here, or maybe already are here and want to work here. And so we're really going to have to look outside of our community in order to fill the needs that we have upcoming in our workforce. We are a very learned group, as you can see that. Very exciting to see. And I think that speaks also to the way that Agnesian supports our ongoing growth. So that was a very neat slide to see. We asked the question about veterans. And as you can see, we have a relatively small veterans population here. So when we start thinking about how are we going to use this data, one of a new initiative might be, how can we attract and retain more veterans to work here with us? We asked about relationship status, and we asked about relationship status in all of its definitions. And so you can see this, we have people coming from many different kinds of families. We also asked how many children were in people's households. And again, getting demographic data, trying to understand who it is working here in Agnesian. This was very interesting though. When we checked the data and extrapolated it from this question to the following question, which is about salary. Now nobody likes to talk about money, so this was again one of those uncomfortable questions that we asked. When we compared the responses on this, we realized that there are people working within our Agnesian community, who are at or near the poverty level when compared to their family size. We also have people who are quote unquote one percenters. And so we are incredibly diverse in the socioeconomic status, but it also makes us want to think about how do we want to think about what a living wage is? How do we want to help and support our families who might be less fortunate or struggling? Then we asked about race. And this is the question as it is asked on the US Census data, because we wanted to compare it to the county census data as well. And as you can see, it's kind of interesting how they divide up racial categories. We are very representative of our county as a whole. Our numbers pretty much mirror our county numbers, with the leaning that we are actually more diverse here at Agnesian than the county as a whole, but pretty close. But you'll see that there are people who have other written. What was unique about this question too is we allowed and we asked people to check as many as possible that apply to represent the fact that people have biracial identities or multiracial identities. And that is not something that is allowed within our current framework for collecting demographic information from our patients. We're getting better with that in different departments. We've talked about that as an initiative. But many people have multiracial identities. The others were people who didn't feel like this question represented who they were. And so again, when we're asking questions, are we giving enough options? Do people see themselves? We want people to feel like they're being represented. And so we asked the following question, which was, what was your ethnicity? And this was really exciting. We had 66 different ethnicities reported here at Agnesian. I wanted to do a cute little slide with a bunch of flags on it, but trying to fit 66 flags on a slide was beyond my technological capabilities. But as you can see, a lot of the things that we would expect in our area are representative. At the same time, we have almost 45% of our population identify as American, or my ethnicity is US, which tells you a lot about the migration patterns. You know, people are often several generations removed from their immigrant status. And so whether or not that is a factor that affects their identity is unknown. But again, very exciting, this one. And again, we asked people to do as many as applied to them. And so you'll see that our percentages don't necessarily add up to 100%. And one of my favorite answers on the other was Heinz 57. So somebody who just said, I got so much going on in my background that I can't even pick them all out anymore. We asked about religion. And again, this was a question, interestingly enough, and you know, one of the things I did want to highlight before I started this, one of our founding members was Sister Mary Mollison. And she was hugely influential in the development of and the shape of this committee. And I was very surprised when she was talking about when they had done some demographic surveys before, people were very hesitant to talk about their religion. In fact, that was the question that was skipped most often. Why that is, I don't know. We can come up with a lot of hypotheses, but when we ask the question, and these are groupings, by the way, we ask the question with as many different categories as possible that we could come up with. people were very responsive to it because I think they felt seen and heard. There wasn't just Catholic, Lutheran, other. There was everything that you could think of as far as a religious category. And so we actually got a pretty good response to this as well. So then we had 2 questions that I think were perhaps confusing to people. And these are coming from best practice standards for working with transgender people. Because there is an idea about what sex were you born at birth, so that's your biological assignment, and then your current gender identity. And really asking people about that because they are not necessarily the same. We're going to be talking about a little bit later how the idea of gender and sexuality is not a binary thing. It is a very fluid thing, and that all of us represent different parts of a continuum. We asked about sexual orientation as well. Again, many different types of families represented here at Agnesian when we cross to what is your relationship status. Then we came to a question that we asked regarding disability. And I guess I want to back up. A lot of times when people think about diversity and inclusion, they immediately think race. And then maybe they go to race plus sexual orientation. We really wanted to think about diversity across the spectrum, as much as we can define. And we had some pushback a little bit on that in the survey with, aren't we all just humans? Isn't there more alike than different? And the answer is yes. And the answer is no. We are all humans, and we do have a lot of things in common. Yet, we all come with our own particular mixture of who we are and what made us who we are today. And so looking at both, and there's a wonderful website that we borrowed some things from, and they talk about you are a snowflake, you are unique, there is no one like you, and you are a member of the human race, and we have things that bind us. So it's holding that balance and holding that idea, which will help us best understand and work together. So we have disabilities across the spectrum. And then if somebody identified themselves as having a disability, we asked a follow-up question. And only the people who identified themselves as having a disability got this follow-up question, which is, do you consider yourself disabled? And again, we can't just judge someone based on disability status. Whether or not that is something that is part of their identity is up to that individual. These were the questions that we really wanted to get to. So once we got through the demographic questions, we started asking about the Agnesian community and the awareness and understanding of diversity and inclusion issues. And so even though we have a large amount of people who say there are no topics that they're interested in, almost a quarter of our population said, I want to know more. Tell me more, there's things I need to know, there's things I don't understand. And when we did a coding of the responses across the board, it came out with education. I want more education on LGBTQ issues. I want more education on racial issues. I want more training in different languages. So this is a word cloud that indicates the frequency. And we had almost we had over 290 responses where people wrote out, sometimes in paragraph form, things that they really wanted to know more about or things they think would benefit our community. And we're using this information to help develop the future programming that we're going to have, the information that we're putting out, and the ways in which we're going to disseminate that information. We asked how people like to learn, and we like to learn across the board. We like a little bit of everything, and so we're going to do a little bit of everything. We're going to have speakers come in, we're going to have things put into health stream modules, we're going to be doing micro trainings on the intranet, so all different ways of engaging people so that we can continue to have these conversations. And then we asked, based on the answers to the survey, are there barriers at Agnesian to feeling included? And almost a quarter of our population said yes. What those barriers are were written out for us many times, and it was everything from, I don't think people understand what I am, who I am, or the things that I deal with. I don't feel safe letting people know about a certain part of me. And so again, even though we could look at this stat and say, oh, we're doing pretty well, when we think of almost a quarter of our population has something that feels like a barrier to them, we need to listen. Again, this is the word cloud when we did a coding of the responses. And you'll see things in here. One of the biggest words is community. And this was along the lines of responses like the Agnesian, or the Fond du Lac community isn't that diverse. or the community isn't very open. And again, this is something that we need to think about if we're trying to attract and retain a diverse workforce, or just a workforce in general. We want people coming here who are going to feel comfortable. We want our community to feel comfortable. And this is an opportunity for Agnesian to really be a beacon for this and help our community also become a place that is inclusive. And then we ask the question about what's your awareness of what's already going on in our community? Do you know about different initiatives? Mostly, no. And so one of the things we're trying to do is let you know what's going on in the community in general. Later on, we're going to ask you if you have any information about different community events to let us know so we can post it on Vital Signs, and so we can have a list of different organizations in our community that people can turn to.
I'm just gonna go back a slide so you guys don't cheat at my activity, because I know you will. No, I'm just kidding. So I'm gonna do a quick exercise with everybody. I'm actually gonna start a phrase, and I want you to all finish it at the same time. So you're gonna yell it back at me, okay? Peanut butter and
jelly.
Awesome. Red, white, and
Blue.
very good, very good. So what I wanted to use this activity as an example of is a concept that we call unconscious or implicit bias. And this is something we really felt was important to cover in this particular presentation because it really has a lot to do with diversity and inclusion and why we view things the way that we do. And so just as we did in the activity, we have these automatic associations with what different phrases are based on our upbringing, based on what we know, based on how we live, that we automatically pair. You know, someone in another country could say peanut butter and something else, or with a different background, peanut butter, and maybe they didn't have jelly in their household, so it's peanut butter and chocolate, I don't know. But there could be something different based on their upbringing and what they know. We do that with people though too, and that's what the concept of implicit bias is that we have this automatic association that people make between groups of people and stereotypes about groups. Sometimes this is misinterpreted though as being racist or being sexist or having some type of prejudice against a group of people. But really it's something that forms in the way that we grow up and in the way that we learn. So can we overcome these implicit biases in healthcare? I thought this was just an important point to cover because there's been some Joint Commission research out there and information about these very issues. And so there's a few things that we really want to think about in healthcare to kind of avoid this implicit bias. So we want to have perspective taking, and really that's the concept of empathizing with people, trying to understand, you know, really similar to trauma-informed care initiatives, you know, what is happening to you, not what is wrong with you, and trying to understand where this person may be coming from. Also, having good emotional regulation skills. If a provider has positive emotions with their patient or with an associate, and they continue to keep that positive emotion and regulate their negative emotions, we're going to have a better experience. And then lastly, we want to build partnership. I think another piece is that we're trying to trend to is really making decisions with patients and not making decisions for patients. And similarly with associates, we want to do the same thing. We want to make decisions and come to conclusions and engage with our associates and not make them for them. So we did want to also cover with you some of the things that we're already doing, which is great, and Agnesian has given us opportunities to continue education and awareness about diversity here. One thing that we've been doing, and I'm not sure how long, so I'm not going to guess, but we've been doing some safe zone training, which really focuses on the LGBTQ community, and I do want to put a quick shout out there. We have a new training coming up December 8th. From 12 to 4, and I believe SOD people, we sign up for that in HealthStream, correct? Okay. So that safe zone training does, like I said, focus on the LGBTQ community. And it's a very informative training. A lot of the associates at Agnesian have already went through it, but if you haven't got a chance, please sign up. It's a great opportunity. We also have a support group that supports the LGBTQ population as well. We've done some seminars within the organization with some of our doctoral interns that we've had in behavioral health, one particularly on Asian Americans, but I know there's been others in different departments as well. We're trying to have more visibility on our intranet and the internet on different micro trainings and things to that nature. We've also in certain departments heard from committee members there's been some different scripting for within our reception areas or within our first responders to be able to ask those questions a little bit differently. For example, sometimes it's uncomfortable to ask somebody, especially over the phone or even in person, you know, what is your race? Because people kind of look at you like, don't you know? You know, by looking at them, but is that really accurate? And so we want to have that accurate information. So we might ask the person, whether it's in person or on the phone, what race do you identify with? You see, just that turn of words or just that phrase can mean something different. And actually, with some of our patients that we work with in domestic violence, some of them have been like kind of refreshed by that. Like, oh, people just assume I'm black, so I guess that's just what I assumed that you would put down. And then they might kind of really talk more about their identity, and then that plays into some of the clinical things that we work on. I'm gonna also touch on a micro training where we have a video for you guys to show as well that kind of touches on a micro training that we may do and focus on in the future. But before we do that, I do also want to talk about two initiatives that we've done as an organization as well. One was led, the Equity of Care Pledge. This was led by Sister Mary, again, as Evelyn mentioned before. She was one of kind of the founders of this committee, and this was a very near and dear topic to her heart. In 2011, the American College of Healthcare Executives, the American Hospital Association, and the Association of American Medical Colleges, and the Catholic Health Association of the United States, and the National Association of Public Hospitals and Health System stood together in a call to action to eliminate healthcare disparities. And Sister Mary was a part of this pledge that happened. So we do want to make acknowledgement to that. And in addition to that, we've had a pledge for diversity in our community of Fond du Lac with area leaders. And Steve Little also was a member of that pledge for diversity. And I think we have that posted also on our intranet. So if people are interested in that. So we're gonna kind of go, as I said, go back to this video because I think it does highlight a little bit some of the disparities that we do have between each other and some things that we continue to have the need to be aware of. So I will let you do that. So we wanted to show you that to kind of put some perspective on our survey results and kind of in alignment with our world and what that looks like. So hopefully that provokes some thoughts a little bit when we have some questions later. So as Evelyn kind of mentioned before, with the survey results, we really had individuals that did know of some resources, but a lot that didn't know about resources and want more resources. So here's a few that we've worked with actually with our committee, or we've known about through our committee: United for Diversity, Ebony Visions, and the Humanity Project, and Fond du Lac. But what we'd like is anyone in the room, there should be a blank piece of paper near your area. And if you are aware of any resources that would help with some of these diversity and inclusion groups that maybe you've accessed, or maybe you have friends or family that have accessed, we're trying to develop some type of kind of catalog of these items to be able to give to people. We'll be doing our research on our own, but we also would also offer this to you to give us any more feedback. So this is something, if you want to turn in things at the end, this is something we'd gladly accept as well. And lastly, before we kind of, I take it back to Evelyn here, we do want to talk about that with this initiative. Obviously we want to have some systems change, and there's some goals that we have to make that happen. We definitely want to make cultural competency a priority. I think in a lot of our departments, and depending on what our practice is, this is something that we've probably learned a lot about, but something that we want to continue to act upon and really carry out. And so this is something that we would want to make obviously a priority. We want to help prepare associates to address unique cultural factors affecting patient care. So as we said before, gathering their demographics, being able to ask those questions, maybe having more education or more background on how maybe is this person's life different than mine, or how can I understand this a little bit better. Recruit, promote, and support a culturally and linguistically diverse governance, leadership, and workforce. Which obviously we do have a statement, and I think we do have a statement that we have from our HR, and also from the organization standpoint that promotes diversity and inclusion in our hiring process. But as Evelyn said before as well with our survey results, we want to continue to make that diversity a little bit greater. Reflect the community we serve, ensure the community's voice and perspectives are heard. So having more trainings, having more panels, having maybe more people coming in that are in our community and expressing what are these things that maybe, what are the barriers for them, or what are they missing? So that way we can have more of that exposure and more of that experience to make their experience here at Ignatian a little bit better. We want to increase the collection and use of race, ethnicity, language preference, and other characteristic data. So as you mentioned before, one thing that we want to have a more accurate description of are these specific survey results that we had of our community members and of our patients. And sometimes we've gotten feedback from other departments that that's not always accurate based on people's comfort of asking those questions, or just simply because the community members aren't comfortable disclosing that information. We really want that to be better. And then analyze our areas of strength and opportunities for improvement. We have lots of strengths at Ignatian, as we mentioned before, with different educational opportunities we provide, with different initiatives we have, with executive support, with all of those items. Those are great strengths that we have, but obviously there's some feedback that we've gotten, and there's some different probably perspectives from yourselves of things that we can improve on. And so please join us in this initiative. As Evelyn said, we might say this 5 more times, but anyone who is interested, or this is a passion for them, we really encourage you to contact one of us to get involved, and we really want to continue more training and more exposure to these specific issues. And I will hand it back over to Evelyn.
All right. So you all should have a handout, hopefully, and I hope the people over at Waupun got it as well. And this is an edugographic. That's my new favorite word, edugographic. And it's a really lovely way about thinking about the idea of we are all different. A lot of times people, some of the feedback we got was, this doesn't really pertain to me. I don't consider myself a member of any diverse group. The reality is we all have something that has contributed to who we are today that perhaps makes us, like Lindsay said, it's our elephant. It's what we don't have. And this is really a way, this is not the melting pot. This is your own personal recipe on what made you who you are today. And some of those things, if you look at the base and broth issues, are things that you were born with. You had no choice in the matter. They're just part of who you are, including your race and your ethnicity, your gender, your sexuality, disability status. Then we have some early additions that are mixed in. Things like socioeconomic status, geographic location. Sometimes people wonder, what does my geographic location matter? Well, if you've ever lived anywhere outside the Midwest, you know it's a much different story out on the coasts. I used to live down south for a while, and I had to get used to that coming from a larger city. Your educational level. Maybe you had more opportunities or less opportunities. This affects who you are as a person today, and certainly your family structure. Then we take those optional ingredients, the things that we choose and the things that we really like, our hobbies, our passions, our religion, our faith, the career path that we take, our political beliefs. We throw in some secret ingredients. These are things that we're aware of, but perhaps we don't share with other people. Some of our personal experiences, changes to the other ingredients over time, hidden identities, things we don't want to share, or misperceptions of ingredients. Perhaps people think we are one way, but in reality we are someone different. And we take all of these base ingredients and we create a broth and we bring it to boil. We add the early additions, we simmer over low heat for 18 to 25 years. Adding optional and secret ingredients to the taste, and it makes one you. So, if you would like to continue this journey for yourself, take this with you. Think about it. Think about what were the things that were given to me right away. What are the things I acquired along the way? How has that made me who I am today? And how does that make me unique and part of the human race as one? So what I'd like to do now is, if anybody has, well, what we'd like to do would be a call to action. That's what we're doing now. Think about the changes you'd like to see in Agnesian, in your workspace, in your cohort, in yourself. And take a minute and write down your thoughts. That piece of paper, we don't know who it is. We don't have writing analyzers, so don't worry about it. Let us know so we can start developing programming that can help you in that journey. Obviously, we want to be as diverse as possible, so come join us. You can sign the diversity pledge. This is something that Ripon College did. Again, Steve Little is one of the leaders on that as well. You can do an individual diversity pledge if you would like. You can be part of that as well. And then let us know what community resources that you have, that you know of, or that you would like to share, so that we can have a really good directory for our community. And now we'll get to the place that's questions. So, any questions or concerns, things that were thought-provoking about this as well? What'd you think of that 100 people video? Was it any of it interesting?
That was awesome.
Yeah. The one that really shook me was when it showed the money piece. Where did that put us, for the most part? Right? If you didn't have a sense of being fortunate before, that really drives it home as well. What other thoughts do you have? Lean into the discomfort. Yeah.
If you're not feeling called to be part of the committee, what are other ways potentially you could be involved in this work?
Thanks, Holly, for that. Yeah, obviously we are all busy. We're doing a lot of things with our workday. And whether or not you can be part of a committee, that is a fantastic thing. One is just continue your own personal education. One of the greatest things that we can do in the area of diversity is expose ourselves to different things. So, for instance, look at the micro-trainings we're going to be putting on. We call them micro-trainings because they're going to be very much like that little video. They're only going to take a couple of minutes, and they're going to be meant to provoke thought. So, work on those. Share your ideas with your coworkers. Be willing to lean into the discomfort with each other. One of the things that we've seen is there's an interesting study about diverse workforces. And they've studied diverse groups versus more homogeneous groups. And the diverse groups report greater discomfort. So in other words, that means they worked harder. They felt personally a little bit less comfortable. And they were more productive, and they were more creative. And so that leaning into the discomfort helps you move forward and beyond where you are today. So I would encourage you, if you are a person who is comfortable with talking about these, to identify yourself within your group. Let people know, I am an okay person to talk to. Go to the Safe Zone training if you want to. Have that opportunity to explore yourself as well as understand perhaps a different group a little bit better. And just be vocal and willing. Really, the willingness is the biggest thing that we can ask for. And when I was looking at the results of the survey, one of the things that came across was some people who felt slightly, I don't want to use the word threatened, but uncomfortable with this topic, in that it challenged some of their very closely held personal beliefs. And I want to say that diversity inclusion means everyone. It doesn't mean you have to have the same beliefs as someone else. All of those voices need to be heard, and we need to know that we need to respect all of those voices. So even if it's different from you, even if it's something you're uncomfortable with, being willing to listen and hear and respect is probably the best thing that we can do. Yeah, hi, Jim.
Hi, Evelyn. I thought the presentation was very good in that when I think of diversity, typically it's gender or race.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily think for all these other areas.
Right.
So that is very helpful and
yeah.
Open my
And I think that's why people say things like, we're not that diverse here.
Yeah.
The reality is we are. It's just perhaps not as visible.
Yeah.
And again, there are some areas of diversity that you can't just see. Now, obviously, people who have areas of diversity that are visible have a different experience than people who have areas of diversity that are perhaps more undercover. And so acknowledging that too, that, yes, we are all diverse, but some people might have a different path in life because of their status in a diverse group. Yeah, hi. Well, that's always the difficult question, because if you're undocumented, you're not necessarily standing up and saying, I'm undocumented. And it's, I'm going to be very careful right now. It's not a very safe thing to do. And so we don't know. I would say most of the statistics that I have read will talk about how that's an underreport. We do know we're a farming community. We have a lot of farms around here. We have a lot of industry that does have people who are undocumented working with it, but the actual numbers, I couldn't even tell you. Yeah.
I'm curious to what level we've drilled down the demographic of our patient population. You talk about the associate in the community, and if 25% of our associates are uncomfortable, are our patients uncomfortable?
That's the next step. We wanted to take care of our house first, and we felt like we can't be asking these questions of the community until we know who is here. And the reality is we are our community. So from where we compared it to census data, like I said, we were relatively similar. I don't know if our results are going to be generalizable to the community. I would like us to be our next step. I will tell you anecdotally, part of when we started this committee, we went and we visited some of the different diversity initiatives in town, and they were very happy to have us there. First of all, they were very excited that we were doing this work, but I had a woman who, she's given me permission, who said when she had come here to the hospital, her family's biracial, nobody asked about her race, and when she got her discharge paperwork, her different family members were identified as different races. And that she talked about how uncomfortable that was for her, how she felt not seen. She was wondering why nobody is answering the questions, and so we drove back and we asked, why is that happening? And we found out that at certain levels of our medical record, we can't put more than one race down. And because we can't put more than one race down, people weren't asking the questions. And so we actually have a lot of data that, and you can speak better to this than I can, we have data that we had holes where there was things that said things like not able to determine, or, and that's not okay for a lot of purposes, Medicare and Medicaid. So we're working on how can we get better data for our patients as well. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The next step, let's take it out to the community and see who's coming in. Absolutely. Any other thoughts? Well, we have another moment. So if you have a moment, we have another video that we held in abeyance, just in case. I will tell you, this is one that touches my heart. I've seen it several times already, and I get misty every time I see it, so just prepare yourself if you need to. This was actually done by the Danish Council of, I forget who it is, so, but it's really effective, so enjoy.
It's easy to put people in boxes. There's us, and there's them. The high earners, and those just getting by. Those we trust, and those we try to avoid. There's the new Danes, and those who've always been here. The people from the countryside, and those who've never seen a cow. The religious, and the self-confident. There are those we share something with, and those we don't share anything with.
Velkommen. Jeg kommer til at stille jer nogle spørgsmål i dag. Nogle af dem kan godt være lidt personlige, men jeg håber, I vil svare ærligt på dem. Hvem herinde i rummet var klassens klovn? Hvem er bonusforældre?
And then suddenly, there's us. We who believe in life after death. We who've seen UFOs. And all of us who love to dance. We who've been bullied. And we who've bullied others. And then there's us, the lucky ones who've had sex this past week. We who are broken-hearted. We who are madly in love. We who feel lonely. We who are bisexual, and we who acknowledge the courage of others. We who have found the meaning of life, and we who have saved lives. And then there's all of us who just love Denmark. So maybe there's more that brings us together than we think. TV2 Denmark. All that we share.
All right, that's all we have for you. Hopefully that was a good reflection for the rest of the day. Thank you so much. If you have any questions or you're thinking about joining the committee, please speak to one of us or email or call one of us, Barb, myself, Tiffany, or Evelyn. Thank you so much. Have a good day. Katie, you're drawing. You probably need to do that.
Yes, please fill out these green slips if you're interested in a chance to win this prize.